Welcome to another episode. Today we are going to learn how to multiply square roots. And unlike addition and subtraction, we don't have to have the same number in order to multiply square roots. So we could just multiply it right away, and this is what that rule is saying. We're going to follow these steps right here to tackle these 4 questions. So let's go ahead and get started with the first one right here. The square root of 3 times the square root of 15. As I mentioned, we can just multiply these numbers. They don't have to be the same. So the square root of 3 times the square root of 15 can be written as the square root of 45. Second step, now you want to ask yourself, can I divide 45 by any of these perfect squares? Just like with anything in life, I mean, the more you practice, the better you get at it. But start realizing what perfect squares you can divide into these numbers. Like 45, we can divide that by 9. So I'm going to rewrite square root of 45 as the square root of 9 times the square root of 5. Basically, I'm just reversing this rule right here. And what's the point of that? Well, if I square root any of the perfect squares right here, I end up getting a whole number. And that's how you get the whole number out. The square root of 9 is 3. We just drop down the square root of 5. And if I can't divide this by any of these perfect squares anymore, then hit the brakes. That's it. That is fully simplified. Let's move on. What if I got numbers in the front like this, right? And if this doesn't have a number, there's that imaginary one right there. When you get something like this where there's a whole number in the front, multiply those out first. 3 times -1 is just going to be -3. And then we move on to the square roots. 5 times 10 is the same thing as the square root of 50. So that's the first part of our steps. We just multiply. Now we try to simplify. Is 50 divisible by any of these perfect squares? Think about money like counting quarters. 25, 50, 75, 100. Counting by quarters is always divisible by 25. So I can rewrite that. We're just going to write the -3 in the front, followed by the square root of 25. And 25 times 2 is what makes up 50. What's the point of that? Well, I got my square root of 25, which is a perfect square. That's going to turn into a 5. That's how we get that square root out of there. -3 was always there. This is times, and square root of 2 drops down, which is going to equal -15 square root of 2. All right, we got a couple more. Let's try another 2 just so you can get really used to this. And we'll try to go faster and faster. First, multiply the numbers in the front. 2 times 3 is 6. Now we multiply the square roots. 2 times 12, that's going to get me the square root of 24. And go to the perfect squares chart, or you could just do it in your head. What can I divide 24 by? I can divide that by 4 and by 6. 4 times 6 is 24. What is the square root of 4? That's going to turn into 6 times 2 times the square root of 6, which ends up equaling 12. Because 6 times 2 is 12. Square root of 6, and I don't think I can simplify that any further. One last one. This looks exactly like the distributive property because it is. Square root of 6 times square root of 2. That's the same thing as the square root of 12. And then we do 6 times 3, which is the square root of 18. And this time there's an addition sign in the middle. So I got to make sure if I can combine those two that they have to have the same square roots. So I can't just say that this equals the square root of 30. That is a no-no. I have to simplify them first by looking for perfect squares and then see if they have a common square root. So let's start with 12. 12 can be written as the square root of 4 times the square root of 3. And the square root of 4 is 2 root 3. So that's that part. We're going to add it to the square root of 18, which we can simplify into the square root of 9 times the square root of 2. Root 9 ends up being 3 root 2. And if you look at this part right here, my answer, these are not the same square roots, and I'm adding. So I cannot combine those together. Leave it as it is. That is the final answer. We can't do anything else with that. And I hope these 4 examples helped. If it did, throw a like and subscribe, and I will see you on the next episode. Peace.